Hey, good morning. Good morning. It is so nice to see you. It will be so nice to see you when you jump on. I'm surprised you can hear me because the rain is so heavy. It has just stopped momentarily, but if it starts again, I couldn't hardly hear myself think a minute ago. So bear with me if it rains really, really heavily. We just had hail and the whole shebang. Hey, everybody, I can see you popping on. Give me a hello in the chat. Where's the chat? Let me have a look at the chat. Blah, 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 blah. There it is. I can see you. So thank you. I wasn't here last week. I woke up feeling pretty poorly. I had a tummy bug. So I felt pretty rough for a few days actually, but I'm feeling a lot better now. So I'm back, and thank you everybody for your lovely messages. I got lots of lovely messages to say get better soon. So I'm sorry, I don't often get unwell actually, hardly ever. And so I don't often miss a show, and it's a real bummer. But sometimes, life. So, but I'm back, which is always a good thing. It's good to see you. All right, let me just see where you are. Here we go. Yep, you can hear me. Good, good, good. I'm feeling good. Yeah, I'm feeling a lot better. Didn't feel good for a few days, but I'm feeling a lot better now. Thank goodness. The fire is on. Terry, we have joined you in the fire. The fire is on at our house, not out here. It's cold out here. But the fire is on inside. It's been on for a few days now. Oh, it's so deliciously warm inside. Like, it's been pretty chilly. Hi, everybody. Hi, Megan. Nice to see you. And Yvette. Oh, it's sunny in Cairns. Nice. Sirens are going off here in Takanini. It sounds like out at the airport. Oh, Maureen, I can't hear that from where I am. But that's no good, is it? Franciane, I can read your name really, really well, but I can't pronounce it. I'm sorry. Good morning. Lovely to see you too. Wet and windy in the Northern Rivers. Glad you're feeling better. Yes, thank you very much. Yes, I'm wearing my lovely double time. This is Lynn's double time. I'm going to talk about double time. So I have to wear a double time to talk about double. I can't take these cardigans off. I just have to say, once you've made a double time, people, you'll wear it all the time. You'll wear it double time. I'm wearing mine double time because it's so easy to wear and so comfy and so warm. And it's just easy to wear. So you will know as soon as you've finished yours. Sunny in Melbourne. Hi, Fiona. Lovely to see you too. Had some awesome winds and rains this morning. Have citrus to cover later, but it warms up when it warms up, and I'm enjoying some knitting time. Oh, I knew you'd come on and say that, Amanda. I just knew it, and I'm going as fast. Like, I'm getting a hole in my finger. I'm knitting so fast. Double time looks fabulous. Thank you, Warmine, for a first outing yesterday. I love it and received lots of gorgeous comments. Yay, Gail. That's good to hear. Reminds me of the tornadoes in the Midwest USA, Maureen, all the sirens going off. And it's cold in Kimbolton, says Claire. We had the most extraordinary thunder and lightning last night. Woke up in the night, the lightning was flashing and the thunder was right over us, and it just went on and on and on and on and on. It was a fantastic storm, absolutely fantastic storm in the night. I was glad to be in a house and not in a tent, that is for sure. Morning from rainy Perth, says Shona. Great. Okay, let's talk about double time. So, yes, it was lots of lightning and thunder. You heard it too, Pam. Let's talk about double time, because in case it rains so heavily again and you won't be able to hear me, then I better get cracking. I'm wearing the double time made with Lynn from Fibre to Go, her yarn. She's here in the chat. I've used Tapestry and Oatmeal Light for mine. I adore this combination. It's like a dirty rainbow, this yarn. It's absolutely, I love it. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Lots of rich jewel tones that have that sort of wash of almost like a gray wash over the top, although they don't really, but it's all sort of dark. It's a bit shady. So it's a really lovely, lovely combo. And then I've mixed it with the oatmeal, but I have seen I've seen some absolutely glorious combinations. So some of you, I've seen you buy some of Lynn's other yarns, and I'm looking forward to seeing those knitted up as well. So I've put it with little dark buttons. I was going to use light buttons, and then in the end, I used dark buttons, and I think it just sort of pulled it together. I wanted something that was slightly more wintry for me, and that pulled it together. Yes, and oatmeal. Oatmeal Light is the name, isn't it, Lynn, for the light color that I used with it. So that's all my edges are in this Oatmeal Light. So it's It's a beautifully smooth yarn. It's a really smooth, it's a superwash yarn. It's merino. It's very round and it's very smooth. I really enjoyed knitting it. It was beautiful to knit. It's sort of slid off my needles and it's incredibly comfortable to wear. So you know that I have another Double Time. I also have one in the Skeins yarn, which is Pulse and Flight. It's a lot woollier. It's a bit more of a relaxed knit. I actually wore that one yesterday. I tell you, I'm going to wear these almost every day. And so it's a little bit more of a relaxed sort of cozy knit. This one feels a little bit more, it's just got a little bit more sheen to it, a little bit more put together is the feeling of this yarn. It's absolutely glorious. And I really enjoyed knitting it. I didn't knit the other one, but I think it would be just one of those lovely old-fashioned kind of cozy knits that roll through your fingers. It's my impression of it. But this one is, yeah, I really loved it. So Lynn she just said she has a whole lot more of the tapestry in stock. So if you haven't got any yarn and you want some of this, I've got to try and show you a little bit more so you can see a bit more of it. There we go. If you want some of this one, then go to Lynn's website and it's at Fibre2Go, Fibre2Go, and it's New Zealand's British spelling of fibre. So Fibre, fibre for the Americans, at 2go.co.nz. Go and have a little look there. And you'll find in the double knit yarn, you'll see tapestry, and that's the one I use. But there's lots of options there. Lynn's got lots of options for you. And if you get stuck, just drop her an email, and I'm sure she'll be happy to help you out. So that's the start. That's what I thought I'd tell you. So yarn. So thinking about yarn, I just wanted to start. We're having a knit along. We're running for about 6 weeks or so. We've already gone for a week, I think, week or two. We've already had the knit along running. Look, there's no real rules with our knit alongs. It's just join in when you can. It is absolutely not a race. There isn't a prize for the winner. The joy is in joining in, doing it together, and actually it's also getting yourself on the train. So you're like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to finish this knit. I'm going to do it with everyone else. And at the end of it, I've got a cardigan that I'm going to wear either now, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, or soon, if I'm in the Northern Hemisphere. So it's a really nice way to actually get things done, I find, but it's not a race. Do please take it at your own time. Please don't feel like, oh, those people have already finished, or those people are further on than me. We don't have to worry about that. They just might have had a little more knitting time that week than you. And also, don't forget that some of them were testers. I feel like the screen is a bit strange today. Sorry, I keep fiddling with it. Some of them were testers. So they are already finished. There are a bunch of testers for this cardigan. So they're already finished. So just join in as and when you can. But I thought I would pop in, and my plan was last week when I wasn't here, to pop in first of all and to talk to you a little bit about getting started. Just let you know about the knit along, let you know that you can just join in at any time, just keep going, and we'll just keep it rolling. So although officially we'll kind of posts up about it and we'll talk about it for about the next month, 6 weeks, there will be more things coming. So we will morph into that later on, and you can just keep knitting your double time for as long as you like. And of course, look, people are buying the pattern every day. So there will always be more people joining us who are just starting. And for those of you who have already made it, you will be so helpful to the people that are just starting. So it's just a nice way to support each other as well, because people always have questions. So some of you are really, really experienced garment knitters now, and others of you are not. And it's really nice to be able to ask questions and know that there's someone there that's going to help you without making you feel like a twit. So let's do that for each other. Here we are. Here's Claire. She knitted my other double time in the Flight and the Pulse. And she said, they were lovely to knit with, and the stripes make it grow faster as you knit. You just want to do another stripe. You certainly do. That I found that too. It just flew off my needles, partly because it's double knit, and it's just so nice to knit a double knit cardigan. I'm currently knitting a fingering cardigan, and it has quite a small gauge, and it's taking me quite a long time. It is so nice to knit a double knit cardigan. But also the stripes, just like, yeah, I'll just do another one. I'll just do another one. Oh, what it looks like now. Look, I'm up to that color. I'll just quickly do that one. You definitely get into that vein of things because it's just 2 rows of each. 2 rows of each. The other one was 2 rows of each as well. So it's just the same. I brought some swatches for you. I'm just going to have a sip of my tea, and then I'm going to tell you a little more. Right, I made notes. Even. Okay, so the first thing I want, so we're talking about, we've got the knit along tools. What tools do you need? It's always nice to have some good tools in your toolkit. Makes life a little easier. You'll need your needles, obviously, and you'll need to swatch in order to determine what are your perfect needles. I use 4mm needles. You might not. You might find your stitches are different. You might use yarn that doesn't quite get the right gauge. We'll talk about that in a minute. So you'll need your needles and you'll need some stitch markers. I wanted to tell you a little story because I'm feeling a little like blown away actually, but also impressed. I'm feeling a little impressed. So one of my daughters is she's 19 and she's never professed to be much of a knitter. She's the one who did a bit of weaving, and she's a good painter. She's always done other things. She's a credible reader. Books are her thing, really. Anyway, she's at university and she is doing her degree. And she said to me, I think I want to make a KAL. She said, this does have a point, this story. Anyway, she does, it was kind of does. I just wanted to tell you as well, really. But anyway, she said, I wanted to make a KAL. So I sent her some yarn and I thought, well, I'll give her some fat yarn because that'll be like a quick win. That's a good thing to do with people that are not big knitters. Send them fat yarn. So I sent her some fat yarn and some needles, like fat yarn. I sent her some like really quite nice, thick Aran weight yarn, beautiful, soft merino that I'd never got around to using, Italian merino. So I sent her that in this lovely teal blue color, and she made herself she started at KAL and she just cast on. We talked about what she might do. I said, just do a garter, just do garter, like just get into it again and just do some garter and it'll look really cool anyway, all scrunched up around your neck. And so she started, and then she realized that I'm not really sure about the sizing, what's happening. So I said, look, you're not going to like this. But what I recommend you do is you knit a little square, and just knit a little square about that big. You can undo it at the end, but knit it and block it, and then you will know how big your stitches are. Well, of course, she didn't want to do that, but she did. She did. She's obviously seen me knit enough swatches to realize there might be something in it. So and also she didn't want to waste her time knitting. She'd already had a couple of bashes at knitting this thing, so she was back in the rhythm of knitting, ripping it out, starting again. Anyway, she started this over the holidays. And so she did a square, and then she counted, I told her how to count the stitches, and she counted the stitches and she counted the rows. And then I said, okay, so what is your dream KAL? How big is your dream KAL? It's this, the loop is this long and it's this wide. So from that, you can work out how many stitches you need to make it that wide, and how many stitches you need to go around. And that's your rows, because she was going to 3-needle bind off in the end. So she did that. That was kind of like a bing light bulb moment for her. And she said, oh, okay, well, I could do that. So she cast it on, off she went, and she knitted it, and it worked out really well. And she's blocked it and everything, and she learned to do a 3-needle bind off. She only had 2 needles. I'd only sent her, I thought I had needles around me, but I don't. I had sent her some of my really fat Chow needles with a cable. That's it. I hadn't sent her anything else. So she had to use a pencil. Well, I think she used the end of a comb, actually, as her 3rd needle to do her 3rd-needle bind off. So she worked out, she'd slide stitches on, and she worked out how to do a 3rd-needle bind off. Anyway, then she sent me, love swatching. It's one of the secrets to beautiful garments. Well, it was a real aha moment for her, because she realized it was going to save her so much time, because she knew now, oh, I do this many rows and this many stitches, and that's how it works. And it was a real moment. So I recommend trying it. But then she said to me, oh, I want to make some fingerless mitts. I'm going to make them to match, the same color yarn, fingerless mitts. I said, okay, go for it. You'll just have to make it work with what you've got. So we're thinking tools now. So she had the needles on a cable. She found a pattern, a free pattern for some fingerless mitts. And she said to me, will these work? And I said, well, no, not really, because they're a completely different weight yarn. Your yarn's quite thick. This yarn is quite fine. So you'll have to figure out how to make them fit your yarn. So you might have to do a little bit of maths. Now, fortunately, she quite likes maths. She really likes maths. But anyway, so she didn't really talk about it anymore with me. Next minute, she said, I've done it. I've realized I've got to make them 20% smaller or something. So I've just done this calculation with the pattern, and I've just worked it out, and I've cast it on, and I've started. And then she knitted it, and she said, oh, I still think they're not quite right. So she ripped it out, started again. Anyway, I think she's made now 5 gloves in total. And she's reworked the thumb. So she knitted it. I told her how she could pick up stitches and join it. We had to do that with FaceTime with her balancing it. And then she ripped the thumbs out, and she said, no, that isn't working. I think I can do the thumbs better. So she rewrote the thumbs, and she did that several times till she got it right. And I said, what did she said she had a stitch marker. I said, where'd you get that stitch marker? Oh, she said, I made it. I made it out of some paper clips. So I've got paper clip stitch markers, and she'd wound her paper clips into circles. And I was thinking, this is make, do, and mend, people. This is what it's all about. She is living the dream. She is living the, I can do it. Just takes a little bit of maths, and I'm not going to let that put me off. I can master this beast. And if I have to rip it out, I will, and I'm going to do it again to make it better. I think I can. And I'm just not going to bother. I'm not going to have emotion about the fact that I've knitted it 5 freaking times or that I've made the thumbs already, but I think I can do them better. I'm taking emotion out of that, and I'm just going to rip it out because I think I can do it better. And it's also about, I'm going to take what's around me and I'm going to make it work. So she took the fat yarn, and she took the needles she had, and she took her paper clips and this funny little pattern. And she didn't just use that pattern. She actually created a different pattern into that pattern. So she had a little stitch that they use that she quite likes, but she didn't like that for it all. So she added a little bit of different parts on the gloves look really cute. So they're little fingerless mitts, although she said her fingers are getting a bit cold. So now she's going to try and make flaps to go over the top. You know, those flaps, and then they flap back. So she's going to do that. But then she sent me a message last night, and she said, I knitted a hat today. So I found a pattern for a hat. I can kind of see how those work. And I've used the pattern that I used on my gloves, and I've just cast on. I sent her quite a lot of wool. I sent her all the wool for this thing. And I've cast on, I've made this hat, and I've made a pom-pom. And so she'd made a hat. Now, there are a lot of lessons for us in that. I told you the story partly because I'm just so amazed by the whole thing. Is this my child? This is just the experimental nature of this child is new to me, but also it's this can-do attitude. I really love it. You can do it. You absolutely can do it. You can do it with what you've got. You don't have to go crazy and buy lots of things. You can make it work with what you've got, but it also really helps to just take a moment to think about things before you start, and to have another bash. Oh, that sun's going to come out on me now after all that rain. It's going to make me too bright. So I thought we could all learn from that a little bit. She's just going for it. And now she said, I think I need more yarn. Now I'm going to do something else. I said, fine. I think you could probably knit a jumper now, and I'm pretty sure you could do socks. Yep. Okay. She said, send me some stuff. So I'm sending her some stuff. So it is really good. She actually said one of the funniest things she said to me was, she said, I never thought I'd be a knitting mother, but now I'm thinking I might be a knitting mother. I said, well, it's a really handy thing to be if you're a mother, because you can take it everywhere. So she's not a mother yet, but these things do occur to her. All right, let's have a look and see what you're saying. Yes, swatching. One of the secrets to a beautiful garment. It really is. And I think it does pay just to take a moment and swatch. We're going to talk about that just in a second. What a great story. I love it when young people are so keen to make something. Very clever girl, following in her mother's footsteps. Yeah, I am very surprised. Yep, she's definitely got the knitting bug. I said, one other funny thing that happened was I said to her, are your friends impressed? And she said, yeah, kind of. I said, did you tell them that you reworked the whole gloves and you basically rewrote the pattern and you made up better thumbs and all of this? She said, yeah. I said, what did they say? And they went, oh, yeah. And she said, I was thinking to myself, do people know how hard this is? Do you see what I've just done here? And they didn't appreciate it, how hard it is. So no, we don't, there is no audience for us, people. We know that. We know that our effort is just ours and we have to enjoy it for ourselves, but we can also celebrate each other. Yeah. So, right, swatching. There we go. Swatching is worth it. It worked for her KAL. It certainly give her an aha moment. So I just wanted to remind you about swatching. I wanted to remind you about the 2 different kinds of swatching when you're doing your double time. There's the swatching you can do where you're swatching for colors. So you check your colors. You want to check that your colors are working together. Do I like it? Now, actually, to be honest, your swatch for that could be that big. You see, you could tell from that much swatching whether you like those colors together. You don't have to do a massive swatch. You could just do a little bit. And if you're stash diving and you're thinking, oh, I might do a combination of colors that I already have, or maybe I'm just going to see if this one works in my stash, but I'm not 100% about it, just knit this much, just knit a tiny amount just to see if you like the colors together. And that way you could do a bunch of little ones and you could come back and say, yeah, actually that one works best for me. Now, you might already know you love these colors together. You might have deliberately bought something, like you might buy the ones that I've got, for example, or something you've seen in our group that someone else has used. That would be fine. You won't want to swatch for colors necessarily because you already know what you like. But if you don't and you're not sure, just do a little tiny swatch like that. Doesn't have to be big. It's probably about 15 stitches in that, and have a bash and see what you think about that. You could block it if you want. If you're not sure what your yarn's going to do, you could block it. You could just steam block it. That would make it relax a little bit. Particularly if you have like a woolen spun yarn or a yarn that's going to really bloom, you might want to give it a little steam just to see how it turns out in the end. Just to make sure that, yep, I'm going to invest hours and hours into this. And I'm going to want to like it when I'm finished. So that's your first kind of swatch. So I recommend doing those little swatches for all sorts of garments and shawls if you want to. If you do want to swatch for a shawl, that's a good one to do. Just a little bit of color. You can do it for color work. You can do it for texture. You can just do it if you're not sure about how to do particular stitches. You can experiment. You could do, if you think about what my daughter did, you could experiment. You don't have to knit a whole glove to work out that you want to do a different thumb. You could just practice a little technique that you're not sure about in the pattern. Or if you think, actually, I think I can improve the way this waves, or I think I can improve the increases or decreases. Or someone was saying the other day in our wardrobe toolbox that they wanted to knit this one inside out, so that side showed. And they were thinking about what can they do for the raglan increases. And that's something you could do just tiny. You could just do that in a tiny little size, some increases and decreases to see which ones you liked. You don't have to spend hours and hours and acres of yarn. You can just do a little tiny bit to see if you like it. So that's swatch number 1, which is tiny. Takes no time. Swatch number 2 is the one, and I'll show you one from my old swatch, is this one here that you do, which is a bigger swatch. And we do this one for the maths. And so you can see it is a bigger swatch, but you can tell a lot from that swatch. You can tell how it drapes. You can see how it falls. Is it going to fall? You can see these two fall a little differently. This was my original timely, and it has the silk and the bamboo in it. And so it's really drapey, that swatch. It falls beautifully. It ripples. This is my new one, which is the merino, and it doesn't have the same drape. It definitely has drape. And if I held up another one next to it, it probably wouldn't collapse in the same way. It would probably hold its shape a little bit more. But the difference between these is you can see the difference between them. This one is a lot more swingy and drapey than this one. So you can test out drape with that, but you can also test out your stitches. So you can count your stitches in it. So you count your number of stitches in 4 inches or 10 centimeters, and you can count the number of rows in 4 stitches or 10 centimeters. Now, something I see people doing often is that they just knit the number of stitches that's called for in the gauge. So, for example, I think this one is 22 stitches and 30 rows, I think. So they would just cast on 22 stitches. Now 22 stitches and this one is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and that's about that much. That is about 22 stitches, and then 30 rows is probably a little bit like that. We can tell them 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28. There we go, 30. So look, we're going back to our tiny swatch again. That's not big enough to give us a good idea of how big our stitches are going to be. And what people do is they cast on the 22 stitches and the 40. I might have got that slightly wrong. Don't take my word as gospel when it comes to the numbers. But you cast on your 22 stitches and your 40 rows, and then you want to measure. You think that's going to be 4 inches and 10 centimeters, and it might not be. But also you can stretch anything out if you try hard enough to make it fit. It's better to cast on about 30 stitches, possibly a little more. If you're working with very fine yarn, you might want to cast on a little more than that. Cast on about 30 or 40 stitches, 40 probably, and then just knit until it's more or less square. You can knit till this one isn't quite square, but it's getting on for it. Look, I'm a little bit short. It could have been a little bit longer, but you knit till it's more or less square. And then you wash it, dry it, let it dry. Don't pin it out too much. Don't stretch it right out. Otherwise, you won't get a good idea of how the yarn wants to be. Just let it dry. I just pin my edges so that they lie flat. And then measure it. And then you measure towards the up and the middle so that you get a good idea of when I'm in a rhythm, when I've been knitting for a while and I'm in the zone. These are how big my stitches are on these needles. And don't forget to write down the needle size you use because, don't do me. I constantly forget to write down the needle size, and then I have to go, what needle size did I use? Pretty sure that I can remember, but I'm not really sure. I try and leave the needles with the yarn so that that's one way of reminding myself. I seem to have a pathological problem about putting holes in to make sure that it's the size of the needles, or I always forget to put knots in my tails. So anyway, write it down if you don't do those things. But there we go. So you knit a decent size swatch and measure it towards the middle. Now you could, if you wanted, you could do a garter edge like I've done on this one. You could do a garter edge all the way around, garter up the side, so it lies absolutely beautifully flat, but you don't have to. You could just knit it. You could knit it so that it just rolls in the end. As long as you've got a big enough space to measure, you don't need to have a garter edge. It's usually fine to have a garter edge where you're measuring stockinette because the garter will stretch more than the stockinette. But if you're going to use a pattern like lace or something, which is going to stretch more than your garter, then don't use garter. Just use nothing because you want it to be able to stretch. You don't want it to be held too small, to be held in place by this garter edge. So you can use a garter edge if you want to. It does look quite pretty if you're keeping your swatches for later to show everybody. So that is the first thing. We know what yarn we're dealing with. We know if we like our colours. We kind of know how our yarn behaves. We learn that through doing a bit of swatching. We learn whether we like the colours together as well. And then we learn how big are our stitches. When I'm knitting and I'm in the zone and I'm just cruising along, not watching anything too scary on the telly, I'm not feeling too stressed, how big are my stitches and how long are my stitches as well. That's what we find out from our swatching. So do that first. If you haven't, you don't have to. You don't have to. You can take a punt and you can just go for it. But, the risk is yours. The risk is yours. You might end up with a garment that is entirely different than you imagined. You can't just pick up yarn and pick up the needles that they say and knit the pattern and expect that it's going to be the size that it is called for in the pattern. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you did because it does matter what you did. Doesn't matter what the pattern says. It's going to turn out as big as your stitches. So if you want to, if you don't like those kind of surprises, it's quite good to do a swatch first so that you can figure out things before you start. For me, it makes my whole knitting experience happier. That is not to say that sometimes I don't knit along and think, am I like really loose now? Have I like really loosened up? Is this thing actually working? Did I measure my gauge properly? Did I measure my swatch properly? Because I'm feeling like this might not be an accurate representation of what I measured in my swatch. And then I had to double check and set myself at ease. But it can certainly give me some panic at points where I think, oh, cricky, I'm not sure have I picked up the wrong needles? What have I done? Have I done something odd here? And so this is when people talk about my swatch lied. It can be that you kind of go off piste once you start knitting and you go into the land of who knows where with your tension. But also it might be that you haven't measured quite accurately when you were measuring. So do take care to do that. I tend to measure quite a few times just to make sure I'm getting more or less this is always the same. And I quite like putting a little pin in on the side of one stitch and a pin in on the side of the other 4 inches along and then measure between. And then don't adjust anything and measure your rows. And do it several times, but also make your swatch big enough. The bigger your swatch, the more accurate your gauge is going to be. So we all have panics. I have panics, so you do, but you can try and avoid them mostly. Okay, what have I got here? Swatch size. Okay, so for choosing a size, that's one of the things that is one of the most confusing things for people is how to choose your size. So in Wardrobe Toolbox, we talk a lot about this. We talk about how to choose our size and how to take our measurements. And it's really good to know who are you knitting for in terms of what is this body that I'm knitting for? How big is it? How small is it? Where do I go out? Where do I go in? Where am I curvy? Where am I not? Who is this body? And so to find that out, we have to do a little bit of measuring. So grab your tape measures and measure yourself, and figure out, what size you're knitting for. When knitting patterns talk about ease and they give you a measurement, it's always this measurement here at the full bust. We're always talking about that. That's all they talk about. They don't talk about ease anywhere else. And you might find that the ease at the bust is different to the ease at the arm. It's different to the ease at the hips. It's different to the ease at the waist. All of your ease will vary. We don't usually talk about ease for length, although arguably you have a little bit of ease because your arm, there's a bit of room under your arm. But the way we talk about it in Wardrobe Toolbox is we use our upper bust measurement. We take that upper bust measurement, we just relax, take a measurement here around your upper bust, so right under your arms, dig the tape measure up under your arms like that, and take your measurement around there. And then you can add some ease to that to find a size that fits you at the full bust. That way it's going to fit your shoulders. So if you want something that fits you more or less exactly at the bust, it's going to be a pretty close fit at the bust. You probably want to add just a couple of inches, 5 centimeters, to the measurement that you get up here. If you want it to be baggier than that, then add more. And if you want it to be tighter than your body, if you want to have negative ease at the bust, just go back and just take the exact measurement at your bust. Then you'll find it's going to be about 0 at your bust. This is assuming that your bust and your shoulders are in proportion with one another. So start there with your upper bust, add a few, maybe 4 inches of ease, depending on how baggy you want it. And that will give you a size that fits you around the shoulders. Now, the more ease you add, the more sloppy it's going to get at your shoulders. But the aim of the game is to find something that does fit you more or less at the shoulders in the way you want. So I think I'd had about 2 inches of ease for this pattern. I'm pretty sure that's what I decided. I think it's about 2 inches of ease at the bust around here. It might be slightly more than that on me. I want it to be something you could wear things underneath. Someone could correct me if I did differently. I can't remember now. I should have got my pattern out. But I wanted it to be something I can wear things underneath. It's comfortable and it's easy to wear. It's a wintry feel. It does up easily. The buttons don't pop open. So for that, take your upper bust measurement, add, I'd say, probably 3 or 4 inches of ease to your upper bust measurement to find something that fits you with that kind of sloppiness at the shoulders. And then to find that you go back to the full bust measurement at the full bust. Now, some of you will find that it'll fit you at your shoulders, but your bust won't fit in because you have a proportionately larger bust compared to your shoulders. So those people need to be thinking about, okay, how am I going to make it fit at the bust? You might decide that you might make the front altogether bigger. See where we're doing increases at the front and the back down our raglan, you might do a few extra at the front. So the fronts actually end up being a bit bigger. So by the time you get to this point here, you've actually got more fabric at that point. That can really work for some people. Other people might find that what they would like to do is put in some sort of bust darts. And for this one, you might actually put in a bust dart under the boobs. So you will add more through the bust so that you have more fabric through the bust. And you can do that by either increasing along that raglan line to make it a bit bigger, or you can do an inside increase inside the raglan. I might talk about this a little bit more next week as well, just how to adjust this raglan line. But you can do some increases just to grow this a little bit more to the amount that you want at the bust that gives you a fit you like there. And then you can decrease those away underneath. You can take the stitches and you can do decreases. You can either do a single decrease underneath, or you can do decreases that come together underneath and then go down your body just to work those stitches away, because sometimes you'll find that I do have 2 inches. Oh, good. And so sometimes you'll find that you have something that fits you at the bust. It fits you nicely at the shoulders. You've added more room for the bust, but then it's like a tent over the rest of you. And if you don't want that, if you find that you go in again under here, then you want to get rid of that fabric underneath. So you can just take it away. These are all the things we talk about in a lot of detail over in Wardrobe Toolbox. We learn how to do it step by step by step. So those of you who are in there, go back and remind yourself. We do talk about it quite often, but you can go back and remind yourself about how to incorporate some of these modifications. But just in a basic, give you some ideas of things that you can do to make it fit you better. Those are some of the things that you can do. Similarly with your arms, you can increase out to an arm size that fits you. But the idea is you first start with a size that fits you at the shoulders. Now, someone says, I have 2 inches of ease at the bust. Okay, so you take your upper bust measurement and you add about, I'd say, 4 inches of ease to the upper bust measurement so that you have a decent size at the bust, but that'll fit you nicely at the shoulders. See how that feels when you have a look at the numbers. Do they kind of look right to you? Is that what you've done before? Do you think you might want a little bit more or maybe a little bit less? You can decide then once you get there. The more garments you knit, the better feel you have of what you're doing, which is why it's quite a good idea as well just to write some of this stuff down. Have a little notebook or something where you make notes of what you're making for yourself, like a tailor would. A tailor, if you were going to a tailor and having things made for you, they would have notes about you and they would have notes about things they've made for you, and they can refer back to those and say, oh, look, we've done that last time we made you that beautiful thing. We used this, this, and this, and we did this, this, and this. You could do that for yourself. Okay. Well, that was kind of the most of what I wanted to talk about this week. I think next week we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about making mods, and particularly at this raglan line. So there's different things that you could do there. But I think start at the beginning with make the most of what you've got. Don't feel you have to go and get special things. If you don't have special stitch markers, you can make some out of paper clips like my daughter did. I thought that was genius. They're all beautiful colors. All they're pretty paper clips. You can use the tools you've got. If you have to use a comb to do a 3-needle bind off, you can use a comb to do a 3-needle bind off. We don't actually have to go nuts over things, although it is really nice. It is really nice to have good tools, but you don't have to get them all at once. You can get them bit by bit. And also take a risk. Take a mess. I just saw mess written there. I'm going to come back to that. Take a risk. Have a punt. Experiment. But you can do a lot of that before you start in your swatching. Have a little go and experiment with things you might want to try. Does it mess up the stripes adding at a raglan line? No, because what you're doing, if you're adding more stitches, so if you're adding more stitches down here, where you do a single increase, you might leave it a stitch or two inside that, and you might do another increase, and you might just have a second increase line that goes down. It depends how many stitches you want to add. So before you start, work out how many stitches do I want at the bust. I'm starting with this. How many stitches do I actually want at the bust? And so where am I going to put those? Probably near the bottom would be good so that it kicks out a little bit more at the bottom. Don't start them too high. You don't want your increases to go out too high at the top. It's nice to have them going out further towards the bottom, but you can do them inside. If you have a lot to do and you don't have any spaces in the raglan increases to put them in, or you've already got quite a few of the double increases down the bottom, you might want to do a second line of increases just inside, and you just dot them down inside, and you'll find that overall it might not be too many, and you don't have to do them at the back. Just do them at the front because you're just going to fit your bust in. It doesn't happen at the back. So you can just pop them in at the front. Now, if you think about it, if it's 22 stitches for 4 inches, then what is that? That's 5.5 stitches per inch, isn't it? 5 4s 22 6. What am I doing here? You're making me do maths. I'm making myself do maths on the hop. 2 stitches divided by 4. Yeah, 5.5 stitches per inch. So for every inch you want to add at the bust, you can add 5.5 or 5, 6, probably 6, because you can do 3 each side, stitches. It's not that many, actually, if you think about it. So if you, let's say you want to make your bust 2 inches bigger than it's called for in the pattern so it fits you in, then you only have to add about six stitches on either side. It's not really so many. I finally found a use for the one earring from when I lost one. It makes pretty stitch markers. Yeah, it's true. Oh, Alyssa says, I have an exercise book with all my extended family measurements in it. So helpful because I'm forgetful. Yeah, because it's the kind of things you don't need to remember, isn't it? You can just write those down. You don't need to remember those. Someone else says, for increasing the sleeve size, there are rows in the pattern where there are no increases, and I just add mine in there. Yeah, so you'll often find that with the sleeve. You'll often find that there are rows which are blank that you can add more stitches into, or you could just do a couple of double knits. It's, if there aren't, you could just do a couple more at the bottom. Mine is a size 4 pattern, and I have about a 36, 37 inch bust. It just depends on the bra I'm wearing, and and how old I'm getting. I think everything's just getting lower. But I'm about a 36 bust, and I'm not terribly big in the shoulders. I'm pretty averagey small in the shoulders, but I'm kind of proportional through my upper bust and my shoulders. What else was I going to say just then about the increases? Yeah, the thing is, the challenge that you will find is that when you're knitting a thicker yarn in a raglan, and you're knitting a larger size, even a medium size to larger size, you don't have many rows to play with. So you have to get from the stitch count up here, right? You have to get from whatever the stitch is, well, the stitch here underneath the neck, because by the time you've joined at the neck, you've got a stitch count here. You have to get from here to here, a different stitch count at the bottom that's much longer, in this many rows. So you have to work out, how am I going to get all those increases in all those rows where it still looks nice? Because the larger my size, I don't increase that much down here. My size, the length doesn't increase quite as much as it does in width. So you need to start thinking about, how am I going to fit in more increases down the side and make it still look good? I quite like the look, which I often will use, although I'm really playing with it a lot in this one I'm just doing at the moment, but where you pull your stitches out. So you do a lot of increases, less increases, and more increases. I love that look. So you might want to make that work for you by, see how it kicks right out here. I think it makes for a nice fit under the arm. But this is where I'm saying, if you have not much space to play with here, and you don't have much more room to add in increases, bring them inside a little bit and maybe do a second row of increases. So you can just dot them down, but don't have them starting too high. You don't want them kicking out too high up here. Have them about 60% of the way down, and then dot them down underneath there. Best you can. I find it really helps to draw them out, and I've showed the people at Wardrobe Toolbox. I think I gave them a little tool where you can just make it on a bit of paper. So on one side of the paper, you have your sleeves, and the other side you've got your fronts and your backs, but you might have sleeve, front, back, and then you have different numbers of and the number of rows you can work over, and then you can say, okay, I have to put in this many increases, and you've got to work out where to put them down that thing. You can totally rework the whole raglan yourself if you want. There is a new test coming. Yeah, I'm not even going to talk about it, because I'm not even going to talk about it, but it's coming. You'll like it. But it's not here yet. Oh, one day I'll catch up with myself. Didn't help that I got sick for a couple of days. Okay, and it didn't help I put another whole pattern in the middle of it. This one just like interrupted my schedule, my Wardrobe Toolbox schedule. Anyway, hopefully that's given you a few ideas. I would like you to come away feeling like, yeah, I can do it. I can do it. It's just numbers and knitting. I can totally do this. I can also do things I want to do. I can make it mine. I can take some of that 19-year-old self that I had. I can take some of my adventurous spirit, my can-do attitude, and I can put that into my knitting that I'm doing now. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Ideally, it fits us nicely, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Nobody sees our mistakes. Only we do. And we can fudge those and we can make them work. But there are certainly things you can do to make your life a little bit easier, your knitting a little bit calmer and happier to get you to the end. Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. I knew that's going to be you, Amanda. There still are 3 weeks till it's due. It's so much time for you people. All right, everyone. I'm going to let you go. I will see you next week. Do lots of knitting. Help each other out. And over in the Hangout there, for those of you who are on tuning in from YouTube, come and join us over at the Hangout on Facebook. It's really nice over there. And we're hosting our knit along over there. So you'll be able to see everybody's double times that they're knitting. And there are weeks and weeks and weeks up your sleeve. So you can still join in. You are absolutely not late. There's lots of time. And there will always be people joining us all the time who are knitting double time. So it's good to just sort of pitch in and help each other out. Okay, everybody, I will catch you later. Have a lovely week. Do heaps and heaps of knitting. I hope that wherever you are, the sun has a moment to shine. Things aren't getting quite as wet as they are down here. But if you have got thunder and lightning, curl up, do knitting, enjoy it. It's pretty exciting kind of weather, especially when you're tucked up in bed and you can hear the rain on the roof. That's true knitting weather, I think. All right, everybody, I'll talk to you later. Bye.